Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Animation Appreciation Podcast. I'm your host, Liliana Stargazer, and today we'll be covering Anastasia. Take a moment in the opening shot of the grandmother and just admire the details. Someone put every single detail in there. Also, the music box grandmother gives Anastasia is actually not accurate to the original. It was described as plain and silver, but it's still beautiful. The dolls dancing in some of the carriages are actually CGI. The drawing Anastasia gives her grandma is actually a replica of a real drawing the real Anastasia gave her real grandmother. Rasputin's ghostly vial is CG, but the spirits that come out are hand-drawn. Rasputin was actually drowned, among other things. That's what finally killed him. That is a wild story, and I will actually be covering that at the end of this episode due to the graphic nature of it. By the way, none of the Romanovs survived the attack. They found Anastasia's remains, but that was like 2007. But Disney chose to follow the alive idea. Again, I will be covering the actual history of this at the end of the episode. This movie seems to be choreographed as if it's a stage play, which is not a bad thing. It actually, I believe part of it is rotoscoped, and that's why it has that look. Also, while saying she's right under their noses, they passed right by Anya, which I didn't notice until like my second watch through because I'm kind of a dingus. Throughout this movie, we see examples of deep canvas. In the Dark of the Night is a great villain song, in my opinion. Also, if you're going to curse someone, just check your wording and don't say, "I will not rest until," and then you don't end with this fate. Also, don't curse people. CGI train. Bartok is the cutest little bat next to Ferngully's Batty. I had actual little figurines of both of them growing up because I'll tell you what, wow. On the ship, the blue dress that she puts on is not the one he gave her. Also, her hair got longer. As someone who has been growing out their hair for 2 years, mine started out as short as Anastasia's, and it is now as long as hers when she supposedly just put her hair into a ponytail instead of an updo. That is not how that works. Mine took 2 years. Also, when she's out on deck and it's raining, somebody added a shine to her nightdress. And the only reason the cloth is still blowing in the wind, if you've never been out on an ocean during a storm, the winds there are insane. Also, the ship is CGI. In the scenery of the song Paris holds the key to your heart, it's actually the entire style when they go into that painting style is called pointillism. That is when you do an entire painting with tiny dots of color that actually form various shadings and shadings, lines, and everything else of a painting. Instead of brushstrokes, you just use dots of paint. I've done it. It is tedious, and I would rather just paint as normal. Every time in this movie, when she's being open, honest, and vulnerable, there is a light cast across her eyes. Every time they walk up to a mirror, take a quick moment to just look at the mirror and see how perfect the reflection is. They had to have a reference for those because there's just no other way to get those reflections perfect. Due to the age of this film, I was unable to have anyone else point out any other details that were not about history. So from this point on, I'm just going to give a quick trigger warning and let you know I'm about to discuss the dark and twisted story this Disney film is based on. If you are sensitive or young, please. First off, why are you on my podcast? I have it flagged as adults. Second, if you don't like gory details or dark twisted history, then you need to stop listening now. Viewer discretion is advised from this point on. You've been warned. All right, let's start talking about Rasputin. Rasputin is a holy man who befriended the royal family by becoming their confessor. Most of his popularity with the family was because they believed he helped their son with his condition of genetic pain and bleeding. He had, I believe it's hemophilia. He he had thin blood, and because he was always bleeding and sore, he was given aspirin by his regular doctor, which, just so you know, aspirin is a blood thinner, which aggravated the problem, and Rasputin simply took that away. I mean, he probably gave him a hokey treatment too, but mostly taking the aspirin away helped. He was very much known to be a horn dog and an alcoholic. Rasputin, by the way, Rasputin did sleep around Russia, just so you know. He absolutely did that. It was also accused of raping a servant in the palace, and there are implications that he did things to the royal family. I have no evidence, so I'm not accusing him. I'm just telling you this because that was what was prevalent at the time, and it actually led to a peasant woman stabbing him repeatedly in the stomach due to these rumors. And by the way, he was stabbed in the stomach when medical care was not so good, and he lived. That is phenomenal. They did not have the medical care we do now. They had none of it. I would also like to point out, I just want to talk about Rasputin's last day. This is one day. One day. He was fed a smorgasbord of desserts laced with cyanide. Cyanide, one of the strongest poisons we know of. Enough to kill an elephant because they didn't know what he was going to eat. So they poisoned everything. They poisoned the wine, and he had 3 glasses. He had a lot of laced food and wine. It didn't kill him. It didn't even come close, which is weird. So the men who tried to poison him stood up and shot him in the chest. He fell over. They actually went out and, sorry for my cat. They went out, dressed up as Rasputin, went to his house, changed back to their normal clothes, and left. That way it would look like Rasputin had gone home. They were just doing an alibi for his being missing. Anyway, they get back, he pops up and starts attacking them. For good reason. They beat him. Then he got shot again. This man has been shot twice, poisoned with enough cyanide to kill an elephant, and he's still going. Well, this time he falls down again. One of the maids that he had supposedly raped came into the room, apparently, or somehow got involved in this, and she took his, she castrated him. If you don't know what that means, you don't need to know. By the way, apparently that part is still on display somewhere. Don't know where. Mummified. Anyway, she cut off part of him, and he was rolled up in a rug or something. I heard he was rolled in something, so he couldn't. I remember thinking he couldn't move. And they shot him in the head and threw him in a river. Well, by now, because of how much he had actually just survived that night, he was believed to be a wizard simply because, oh my God, you can't kill him. So they fished him back out of the river. Don't ask me how they found him, but they did it. And I heard that they found out that he had drowned. He had been shot 3 times, once in the head. He had been stabbed earlier in his life and survived. Ate enough cyanide in that one night to kill an elephant. And he died from drowning. So yeah, Disney skipped straight to the drowning. Also, Anastasia was said to have been lost, but recent studies found bones of a male child and female found on the grounds. Granted, the reason they thought that she was lost was they had found a single grave with 2 people missing. We actually don't know if this is Anastasia or one of her slightly older sisters that was in the range for this. But anyway, I'm going with it's Anastasia. So Anastasia's family was over here in one place, and then they removed the one, I can't pronounce his name, the one boy child and her, and moved them to a new location and buried them there. They found, let's see here, they found the bones of the male child, DNA tested it, and that's how they know it was him, who was also related to the other bones he was found near, but they are of a female. They actually found vertebrae that are not fused in a way that indicates a young woman, usually of 17 to 19. So, yeah, that was Anastasia. So they were all found, but they were not found in 1900s, or I put 1918, but I don't think that's right. Instead, they were actually found in 2007. So we know what happened to Anastasia. It's just not a delightful ending. Some people say that she was tormented in front of her family and killed. And Anastasia's grandmother really did believe her family had entirely survived, but that's because she was living in Paris in exile because she's a dowager empress. She never actually offered a reward nor actively tried to find them. So, yeah, she 100% did not offer the reward. She wasn't actively searching. She figured they're fine until later she realized, I guess they're not, and didn't try to find them. She died at the age of 80. So, yes, we know what happened to Anastasia. Mystery solved thanks to DNA and a lot of things, but DNA and investigative things. The actual secondary site and primary site for the family were hidden from history by an entire group. I forgot what the group's name is. Really should have looked that up. My bad. I was busy being baffled by Rasputin and his inability to die. So, yes, that is all I have for Anastasia. Thank you, and thank you for listening. And always remember, if it's animated, someone did it on purpose. Yes, my cat is loud, but I still love him. Thank you all for listening, and have a great night.